This is the Real Love Talk podcast, where we show you how God's love and self-love can help you get to your desired destination. If a God-designed marriage is your goal, then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Shenique Luke.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Real Love Talk podcast. I am your host, Shenique Luke, and get ready for another amazing episode. Today, we are chatting with Miss Shanna Kay, and we're just talking about her journey into marriage. So welcome to another episode of Wifey Wisdom. So as you know, Wifey Wisdom is just a series that we touch on about the journey into marriage, what it looks like, what it doesn't look like, the individuality of it, and just how specific and special it is to each individual person. Understand that God does not have a blueprint for every marriage, for every journey. So we just want to identify how each journey can be different for each woman. So my guest today, I met her through an actual networking group of moms and wives, and wait till you hear her story. I love her because her perspective on life is very similar to mine, but also it is radical, honey. Okay. So I'm excited to see her journey, hear about her journey into marriage, and just get right into it. So I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shanna Kay, and I'm a mom of 3 children. I host positive discipline workshops, and I'm really excited to be here today to tell my stories. Definitely not the typical love story, but definitely one worth talking about.
We love the non-traditional, like I say, listen, this one right here. So we met through the networking group, and then I started following her on Instagram, and she says the stuff that I'm thinking. Listen. So I'm curious to see what she's going to say today. It'll probably have you raise your eyebrows. So I'm excited about it. No, it's going to be a good time. So, all right, let's get into it.
Yeah.
So how long have you been married?
So in February, it will actually be 5 years.
Oh, nice.
We've been together 8 years, and it'll be 5 years.
Okay.
Coming up.
So tell me about how you met.
Okay, so I feel like I'm one of those rare people who had a internet relationship turned real life relationship. I met my husband at the end of a really bad season in my life, and I had a friend that was just like, you've been in this, relationship rut. It's time to move on, get on this app and see, what's out there. And I'm just like, a dating app, who does that, right? Saw him on the app, and I actually, what do you do, ping it first? He had his profile picture was him and his grandmother. So I was just like, anybody who has their grandmother in their profile picture clearly is not a serial killer. So hit him up, and I remember one of the questions, or the pairing questions, was what would an ideal first date be? And he said dinner and a movie. And I wrote him, and I was just like, why dinner and a movie? First of all, if you're in a movie, how are you even going to get to know somebody watching a movie? So he was like, well, I guess I never thought about that. And we kind of just talked that way. Nothing really came of it, but I was actually in the middle of buying a new car. And I remember some of our conversations being, him really into cars. So that Saturday morning, I just randomly text him, and I was just like, hey, I know this is probably kind of weird. We never met in person, but I'm looking to buy a new car, and I would really like, some male help. I don't want to go to the dealership by myself. Literally, he was like, okay, no problem. Just text me the name of the dealership and I'll meet you there. Literally just that simple. I just was like, okay. Like about 20 minutes later, he calls me. He's like, hey, where are you? I'm at the dealership. And I was just like, oh, wow. Okay. He means business. So I quickly got dressed, nothing special, like baseball cap, jeans, t-shirt kind of set up, and met him at the dealership. And it was like one of those buy here, pay here kind of places. He was like, I know we're just meeting. I don't want to tell you what to do or whatever, but I'm looking at this car, and I'm just like, I don't think you should get it. He started going around the car, telling me all the things that were wrong with it. And I was just like, oh, okay, what am I going to do? He was just like, well, if you put any money down to hold the car, get your money back. But I don't know. I just felt a little nervous to go tell the sales guy that I didn't want the car. So he kind of was like, what are you nervous about? I'll go tell him. He was like, excuse me, sir, she's not getting this car and she's going to need her money back. And the sales guy was just kind of like, upset about it. He was just like, oh, she can't get her money back today. He was like, well, it's illegal. He starts saying all these legal terms, and I'm just standing there like,
you're like, ooh,
okay. He's like, don't worry, you'll get your money back by Tuesday. We'll write you a check. But at this point, I'm just bummed out because I thought I was going to get a new car. My car was already literally falling apart on me. And he was just like, why not go to JM Lexus? Because I was trying to buy a Lexus at the time. And I was just like, well, I don't have any credit. I never got anything on credit. I only had X amount of dollars to buy this car. So I don't know how that whole financing a car goes. He's like, why don't you just go and try it out? You don't know. So long story short, we drive to the dealership, and this is my first time actually like financing a car. I did not know. I thought it was like the movies. You go in, pay for the car. Literally, we were there from about 3 p.m. to about 9 p.m. The salesperson's talking to him the whole time because I guess they already assumed that we came in together. We were a couple. And the whole time I was just sitting there like, daydreaming like, wow, he's such a good guy. You're planning your whole life in your head. And funny enough, that night, got the car and everything. And he goes, wow, we've literally been out all day doing this. Maybe we should grab some dinner. So I'm just like, okay. So we go to get dinner. This is when we were living in South Florida. We go to Rocco's Tacos, get some dinner. After that, now it's like 1 a.m. and we're both like,
oh my God, that's all day.
Right? We're like, okay, we don't want to like not hang out some more. So then we go to a little nightcap, a bar down the street, had some drinks. And then now it's like 3 a.m. and we're like, all right, still don't want
nice
right
to end.
So then we do the whole let's walk on the beach type of thing. He ends up getting a ticket because his car was parked longer than it should have been parked. And I feel like every weekend since then we've been hanging out, and here we are.
Okay, so let's go back to the online dating part of it, because there's probably a lot of fear associated with that for a lot of women.
Of course.
But I know it's a lot more common now. So were you nervous to meet him when he actually showed up at the dealership? Were you like, oh my God?
That was the part, because I'm like, again, it's not like we spoke a lot before actually meeting up. I want to say this was maybe within like a 2-week span.
Okay.
And for me, I guess it was just having 2 children prior. It was like, when do you find time to actually go date? Especially when you're not in the best co-parenting setup. My mom was still working at the time. So, and then it's like, I'm not watching no kids for you to go, have fun or whatever. That was the setup at the time. So I felt like it was convenient, and it prevented me from doubling back, especially when you're trying to move forward. So at the time, I just felt like I wasn't thinking it was going to be anything serious. It was just someone you can text, talk to, and, I can have grown-up conversation.
So now that you guys are like enjoying this weekend, did you plan your wedding that night?
I low-key did. And I think what it was that, when you meet someone that's a breath of fresh air, coming out of my previous relationship, I felt like, someone always tried to put you down or make you seem like you weren't worthy of
or asking
love.
for too much.
Or that's the word I was looking for, just asking for too much. And you meet someone who was just so willing to plan, execute, just do all the things that you feel like you were begging for in your last relationship. I think instantly I just felt that comfort, and even though he was someone new, he felt familiar. So
safe.
Safe. That was the word, safe.
So okay, I know we have a bad habit of planning the wedding. We get on a date, or someone asks us for a number, and we're like, okay, this could be the one. Did you know he was the one?
Yes. And I want to fast forward a little bit, because this was like in October. So by November, he's planning, because he was originally from Colorado. and he's planning to spend like Thanksgiving and the holidays with his family. And, you know, when you just meet someone, you're just like, oh, okay, well,
How
I
do I
guess
fit in there? Are we
exactly. And
going to?
he's just like, you know, I mean, I know it's probably awkward on both ends to just dive right into meeting families, but he was like, you know, if you want to take a weekend, we can go down to Key West. I've never been, you never been, and we can do this. So I'm just like, okay. You know, that again, you're like checking all the boxes.
Yes, I do actually.
Right? So the part about it where he gives me his card to pay for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I call the hotel that we're staying at and I make the arrangements. And, you know, of course, they're like, well, your name's not on the card. How are you related? I'm like, oh, this is my husband. And, you know, we're planning our stay. And she's like, okay, no problem. He does all the things. A couple days later, he goes, so are you telling people we're married? I'm like, you know, you're dying on the inside because I'm like, oh God, does he think I'm a crazy lady? He's like, oh, because the hotel called to confirm that, you know, my wife just called and, you know, said that we're setting a vacation. And I was just like, you know, you're dying on the inside. He's like, oh, so you're my wife? And I'm like, um, he's like, okay.
Yes,
he was just so cool about, right?
He
He was so cool about it. And I was just like, oh, wow. Wow. Okay. Again, coming from a previous relationship where for 4 years you're talking about marriage and someone's like, oh no, not ready.
Yeah.
No, you're not the one or whatever. So that kind of helped me put my shoulders down a little bit.
So physically, was he your type?
Yes.
Yeah.
I like big guys, you know, someone that, you know, you can kind of stand behind and let them step up. So,
because on the app you have to like
correct. And I mean, I think naturally we like to see what we like to see.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That was, but I just got tired of, how would you say, like letting looks lead, because someone can be really nice on the outside and then trash on the inside, you know? So, and personally, I don't have a type per se. My type is someone who is going to care for me, nurture me, like all those things.
Yeah. So I had a type, but then it's weird. Okay, so I had a type like when I was younger. So I'm 41. How old was I when I met Mario? 31. So I had a type like in my, okay. I was about to say in my 20s, but I was like 31. So it's like you were kind of still there. So I had a type like high school, early 20s, and then it shifted in college. And he was like the old first type, like pretty boy. But I had written them off because of my experience. And so he was not. And so even when I met him, so usually I always ask that question because it's so interesting to hear how women are like, I'm done with this, or this was exactly, I think I've probably done about 35 interviews and one person was like, he was exactly what I wanted. Everyone else was like, no, he wasn't.
I think
so I always like to ask that question.
He was exactly what I wanted. But for me, okay, maybe I should start a little bit earlier. So I had my first child straight out of high school, 17. And it was with someone at the time where you just you doodle their name, hard eyes, because you know that's the person that you're going to be with forever. And very quickly, you know, you do the I'm pregnant, and it just felt like the rug was ripped from underneath you. And I don't know. I felt like I was robbed that first mom experience, especially when leading up to that. Even though being very young, I feel like I always wanted a family. I always wanted a husband. So I felt like, what's the difference now versus 10 years from now, whatever time frame, you know? So that was very hurtful. Didn't speak to him for 3 years because I just felt like I was one of those, well, I'm going to show you, I don't need no man, you know? Then that was with my son, and then I met my daughter's dad, and instantly you get into panic mode where you're just like, I already have a child, failed relationship. I can't let this happen again. So instead of having a type or vetting somebody out, you just instantly jump right into a relationship and you're like, I need to have a family. I need to have a family. I need to pick up all the pieces and
Yeah.
just, whether it's a circle or square, I just need to stick everything together so it makes sense. Then I got pregnant with my daughter, and now I'm like, oh God, I'm that girl that I talk about, like 2 kids, 2 baby daddies. Oh God, what am I doing? So you're forcing something, and I don't want to curse, but you know, when you force something, you know the saying. And I felt like when you know something is not right, and out of desperation, fear, and all of that, you just stick it out way longer than you should have.
Yeah.
Even when you
Making it
know.
worse.
And I feel like the longer you sit in it, the it just no longer starts to stink. And then you have people around you saying you're better than this, and you know you're better than it, but it's just something that you just feel like, well, maybe I deserve this because of whatever I'm already convicting myself of. And I just felt like those 4 years, although we're like past it now, and you know, we're in a better space now, again, you just realize that had I would have just followed God's timing and not, I like to say, act like a desperado, I probably wouldn't have had to endure what I endured.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was trying to work on my own timing. I was trying to make things the way I wanted them to be instead of just seeing them for what they were. So when things really got bad, and I say really got bad because I feel like God can be showing you signs and you're just like, oh, I can't see, right? But then things get so bad to where you're like almost forced to see.
Yep.
And
you can't ignore it anymore.
I couldn't ignore it anymore. And it was an incident to where we got physical. And we always talk about domestic violence on the men, right? But when you're a woman on the other side and you realize like, okay, it's me that I'm letting somebody draw me out. I was still in school to become a teacher at the time, and any type of charge against you, you know, like they're automatically revoking your stuff, your license. And I'm just like, wow, how did you know what I mean? You see yourself in such a light. You're like, how did I end up in this predicament? And I realized, because you're forcing what wasn't meant for you. It wasn't meant for you from day one. It wasn't meant from you 2 years in. It wasn't meant from you 3 years in. And the hardest part for me was, again, when the altercation happened and I completely blacked out. And when the police come and you're thinking like, yeah, he's gonna go to jail. Yeah. And then you realize you're the one in the back of the police car and you're just like, I couldn't believe it. And that next day you realize, wow, I am literally in jail. Like, this is real. And at the time, you know, they have people from the church coming in and they're like, do you want to pray? But I felt like my heart was so angry and so hardened that I just didn't even want to pray. I didn't want to receive prayer. But, you know, the lady was just like, you know, come over and join. You don't have to participate, but at least come over and join. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to all these women and their stories. And it's held something for this man, did something for that man. All the women there, it was like about 10 of us. And I'm just like, wow. Seriously? And I just sat there and I just was like, all right, God, I hear you. That was like the only thing I can say in that moment. I was just like, I hear you, God.
So when you talk about God's timing and being kind of forcing something, we had another guest that talked about kind of the insecurities that came from having 2 children out of wedlock. Do you feel like that was the driving force for kind of like proving like I can make this work?
Of course.
How did you move out of that?
Just learning to be by myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that year alone,
after that incident
I feel like I just had to learn to be alone. I was one of those people from the time I was probably like 13. I was that girl who always had a boyfriend, always had a boyfriend, always had a boyfriend. So for the first time in ever, I just had to learn to be alone. Like, again, when you want a family so bad, I just realized, again, I was acting out of desperation. It wasn't, oh, let me see if this person has the qualities of being a husband or being a father. It was just like, pick a person, anybody, anybody was good enough.
So let's go back to so you're in the dealership now. So you've opened yourself up to the dating app, which is kind of not what you were used to. So you've stepped out there. Now you're in the dealership, and so you talked about having certain qualities versus the physical. What did your husband at that time show you, or what? Because you said you were like, oh my gosh, this is so, he's so being this manly man, handling everything. Did you even reflect? And I mean, jokingly, we said you planned out your wedding, but did you reflect on like what would long term look like with him, like how he handled everything with the dealership? Were you thinking about that at that point, or was it like
I'm tearing up because just even showing up, like, he was someone I called on last minute, and he from day one always does what he says he's going to do. I didn't have to wait on him, you know. Thank you. I didn't have to wait on him. As soon as he said he would show up, he showed up. He was waiting on me, and he just did what he's like from day one. He's always just done what he said he was going to do. He saw that there was an issue. He jumped in, and he didn't have to wait for me to say anything. He was ready to have my back, and that alone just made me feel validated again, because I called on my ex at the time to meet me at the dealership all week. All week I've been calling, hey, you know, I really need this car. You know, the car is falling apart. Can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? Oh, I'm not sure. You know, the runaround. And you call a stranger. He was a stranger at the time. It was no objective. It was, sure, why not? Why would I not want to help you? So that alone, you know.
Okay, so at this time, I know you said ever since that weekend, like y'all have been together. So what was your relationship with God like as you were kind of moving through that and just being able to identify, okay, is this for me? Is this not for me?
I was very hesitant because I was just like, God, I don't want to make the same mistakes I've been making. You know, I don't want to see something, because I always say sugar and salt, when you're being desperate, sugar and salt can look the same. And I was just like, I don't want to think this is sugar and end up with a cup of salt again. So God, if this is for me, I want you to prove that this person is going to be for me. And I don't want to say test, but you know, you test him. Again, with the first time I mentioned marriage, and he wasn't like, oh, no. He was just like, okay, you see yourself as my wife? All right. We go on vacation. Everything was great. Then Christmas comes around. I remember I was still in school at the time, doing my undergrad, and I had a computer that was pretty much like falling apart at that point. First Christmas, mind you, just met him on October, and now it's December. He gifted me a new MacBook, and I was just like, wait a minute, I can't accept this gift. He's like, why not? You're in school. I see you like doing all your schoolwork. You're having to go to the library, or you're always having to inconvenience yourself when it shouldn't be like that. Let me help you out. And I was just like,
I don't need a computer.
But you know what I mean? And I was just like, wait a minute, I'm talking to myself now, like, why do you feel like you're not deserving of somebody being nice to you without expecting anything back? Or why do you feel that you're not deserving of somebody wanting to have your back? And I just felt like with everything, because as we moved through the holidays, as we moved through spending time together, he's like, you know, I'm putting out a lot, but you always seem like you're guarded. And he used to compare me to like an onion. He's like, every time I feel like I've peeled a layer back, it's another thing. He's like, what is it that just keeps you so guarded? And, I'm a firm believer of like, you don't want to tell the guy that you're dating all your business, because then it feels like he's just like, oh, okay, let me really take you through it because of what I was used to. And he's just like, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not here to, be the bad guy in your life. I'm literally just here trying to get to know you. And again, it's just something about from the day I met him, you just feel like you've known him forever. Use the word safe. Like, I just never felt like there was anything I can say to him that was going to like scare him off. Or because even when I said, because I did share with him that I had, 2 children, but my, I guess, secret always just felt like, if I tell this man that I have 2 children by 2 different people, then that's automatically going to be the thing that he's just going to be like, oh, no. And he was just like, tell me about that. I'm interested. And I was finally able to let my guard down and share that with him. And he was just like, I feel like that's unfortunate. He shared with me the story with his mom, and him and his siblings all have different fathers as well. And he was like, I don't want you to feel like that's something I judge you for. You're still young, and clearly you're still growing, and I don't want you to feel like that's going to be the thing that's going to make me look at you any different. And that just felt like a burden lifted off of me.
I'm sure.
Because again, you just feel like you're just going to be judged, even though that was my story and it was reality and I wasn't ashamed of it. But a piece of me, I guess, kind of was, because you hear it and you just automatically think like, you one of them girls, where realistically I was in 2 separate relationships that it just ended when they ended.
So you talked about having your guard up, but feeling safe with him, like someone you've always known. And you talked about a prayer that you said to God, like, prove this to me, show me. So what was the point where you said, okay, I'm going to let my guard down and I'm going to see where this goes? Because you also said y'all were together like every weekend. So obviously there was something that allowed you to, let your guard down and make yourself available to be hanging out every weekend. So when did you say, okay, I'm going to stop giving him this, like, I'm going to let the layers come back and I'm going to just see where this goes? Was there something that happened, or was it just like...
I'm smiling because, again, now we're going through the seasons. April comes up. And I remember, like, because at this point, he's met the children, but in a casual way. Like, if I would be able to get my mom to babysit, we would, like, by Wednesday, he would have, like, hey, it's Wednesday, are you free for this weekend type of thing. So I remember we were doing, like, Friday nights would be like a dinner and a movie kind of thing. And he would come over and we would watch a movie with the kids or whatever, just to kind of feel out, because he didn't have any children. And I'm just like, oh gosh, how is this going to be with someone with no children? So I remember one particular Friday, I'm in the line. It was my weekend to get the food. And I'm just like, okay, cool. And I'm in the line and I'm just like so agitated because I'm calling him and I'm just like, I'm in the line, I'm gonna be next, where are you? Like, I'm just aggravated. And he finally calls back. He's like, and I'm just annoyed. I'm just like, forget it, just don't worry about it. It's okay, you don't have to come. Like, you just instantly just over
defense mode.
And I remember we're just sitting on the couch watching TV and I hear the door knock and he's standing in the door. I'm just like, oh, I wasn't expecting you to still come. He's like, yeah, I said I was gonna be here, why would I not come? He's like, I know you were acting kind of crazy earlier, but whatever. So we're watching the movie. It goes on like commercial break. I remember I'm sitting on the couch, my daughter's sitting next to me, and my son's on the computer, like sitting there, like, or his tablet, whatever he was doing. And he literally just stands up. He's like, turn the TV off. And I'm like, what? He's like, turn the TV off. So I turn the TV off and I'm like, what? You're looking all crazy. Like, I mean, I'm sorry if I went off on you earlier. He was like, no, will you marry me? And I was just, same face. That's exactly how my face was. I was just like, what? My daughter at the time, she's 2. She goes, "You better get down on one knee." My son's like, "Yeah, you gotta get down on one knee for my mom." And I'm just still like,
what?
he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." He gets down on one knee. He's like, "Would you marry me?" And I was just like, "Me? You want me?" He's like, "Yeah, why not? I feel like these last couple months have just been, mind you, it's 6 months in now. He's like, these last couple months have been like the best months of like my entire life. Like I've been in long-term relationships, I've dated, and I just feel like I've never met anyone who's been so caring, so loving." And those are words where I'm just like, "You sure you're talking about me?" Because I've never, as weird as it sounds, I've never seen myself as like a caring person or loving. I always just feel like I'm kind of like, get it how you want, just rough. And I was just like, the way he was just describing me, I was just like, wow, you see all of that in someone like me? And he's just like, yeah. And I guess that was the engagement story. And I was just like, God, I remember that night, I literally, after he left and everything, I literally cried, and I was just like, God, me? Like, somebody
No, I know that feeling.
Somebody
so
really
I know
sees
when
me.
you say that.
Yeah, someone really sees me as being like worthy of being a wife. Because before that, I don't know, I guess because of 2 failed relationships, you just felt like,
when you
try to say like, oh, I don't care about being married, I don't care about being in a relationship, it doesn't matter to me, I'm good with being by myself. When I know deep down that wasn't the truth, I wasn't okay with that. So
yeah, but it hardens you because
Correct.
you go into that defense mode or self-preservation.
Correct.
So when you hear someone say that, or I'll even say this, I remember while my husband and I were dating, he seemed to be the first person that didn't give up so easily.
Correct.
It was like he kind of fought back, or
Correct.
he would say certain, like how you said, I was annoyed at the movie theater or getting ready for the movies, and you're like, whatever, forget about it. Like that was always my go-to. Don't worry about it. I got it. You don't have to come because of what had happened with the past relationships. And he was the first person that was like, no, I'm gonna worry about it. I'm still gonna show up. And I didn't have to like beg him to, you know what I mean? So I know exactly what you mean. And he still chose me, even with my attitude or even when I was in a funk. And I was always used to fighting. And for the first time, he was like, no, you don't have to do all that.
That's how I always
or let's
felt
talk about it. Or
that's how I always felt like, I don't want to say arguments were, but like, because he'd be like, why do you think we're arguing? It's okay for us to disagree. Like, we're not arguing. And I'm just like, let's argue. You're right. All built up. And he's just like, okay, I mean, you're upset. Well, maybe now is not the time to talk about it. And I'm just like, yes, it is. He's like, I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight with you. I don't want to argue with you. I don't want to make you upset. Like, if you're upset, that's okay. We can both be upset, but let's just cool down before we get into a place where both of us don't want to be. And again, you're just so used to fighting, arguing, fighting, arguing. So when you're not fighting and arguing, almost you're just like, do you like me?
Okay, question. And I'm curious to hear your answer. So because of your past relationships and the drama and kind of all the things you had gone through, when you started dating your husband and there was no drama, were you bored? Did you create drama?
Yes, of course. Because, that little talk, I always say, my evil twin sits here and she's just like, you called him once. Where is he? And you feel like you're about to go into like...
I was
and
so
I would call
bored.
him. I would call him. He wouldn't answer. But then the moment like the crazy was about to turn on, he'll shoot me a text like, hey, I'm really busy at work. Give me a second. And I'll be like, I'm going to catch you. You wait and see.
I know.
Like that built up something. But then when I was with him, it always just felt like that fairy tale.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I always say it now that if I never experience another love in my life, I just feel like within these 8 years, I've had enough to last me a
Aw,
lifetime.
that's
Because
so
he's
sweet.
just that guy, like flowers, dates planned, and you're just like showing up like, wow, all I gotta do is
Mm-hmm.
just exist. This is real. And that's how I always just felt like, God, is this real? Is this
Mm.
real?
Well, I guess he showed you, didn't
And
he?
that's the part. And again, we got engaged really soon, 6 months in, but we didn't plan a wedding until 4 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And that was on me because I just felt like I didn't know anybody,
What do you
that was
mean?
married.
Oh, okay, I got you.
I didn't
I
know
got you.
anybody that was married. That was number one. And the people that I did know that were married, they hated each other.
Mm.
And or they were just conveniently married, like, okay, we've already been together so long, we have this house, we have these kids, we have all these assets, they come in the room, you smell the funk type of marriage, so you're always just kind of
Mm-hmm.
like. So I was, even though I know I wanted marriage, I didn't know what that looked like, and
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like I didn't want to be the person that messed it up. He had grandparents that were married like 20, 30 years, and I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my God,
So he had seen it.
and I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm gonna be the person that comes into this marriage and just messes it up.
Mm.
So I just felt like if I can just hold on to what we have right now, then
Mess it up.
I won't mess it up. And then I got pregnant, and he was just like, I don't want you to have another child, and you're not, we're not married.
Mm-hmm.
So on Valentine's Day, we got up and we went to the courthouse and we did it. And I was just like, I remember that morning, I was just so nervous. I was just like, oh my gosh, if I do this, is it going to work out? Is it going to work out? That's like the only thing I kept thinking. And he was just like, I don't see why it wouldn't work out. I've been, for the last 4 years, just
I've
showing
been
you
here
that.
since the car dealership.
That's what he said. He was like, I've been here, so why would now be the time that I would choose to walk away? And I'm just like, the fear of, now I'm having another child.
Oh yeah.
Here it comes. And I was just so nervous. And we went to the courthouse, we did it. And I remember just like walking out and just being like, wow, okay. He was like, now let's plan the wedding. And I was just like, what?
Okay, so let's go back to this. So you get engaged 6 months, and now you're having a wedding at the courthouse. Did any of like okay, first of all, um, online, 6 months, courthouse. How did you feel doing things in like the non-traditional? Like this looks completely different than what we're told that a successful marriage looks
Mhm.
like. You meet them in person. You meet through friends, or you date a year or two, and then you get married, and you have this huge wedding. So all these things are just unconventional. Did you have to convince yourself, like, okay, it's okay if it looks differently, or did you just ease into it?
I felt like, again, just trusting God and
Mm-hmm.
just saying, well, I'm tiptoeing, God. I'm moving in your direction, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
a tiptoe through this because I'm just still so scared.
Mm-hmm.
I remember at the end of that year, both of our leases were up, and I was just like, I was very adamant about never living with someone I wasn't married to. Um, and he was just like, all right, let's do it. And I'm still just scared, like, okay, not now, not now, maybe next year. Next year when we're settled into this place and we move in together. Um, and even that showed me a lot about myself. Like, I was super demanding. I wasn't easy to compromise. I wanted things one-sided. Like, it showed me a lot that I had to work on within my own self. So a lot of the problems that we were having, it made me take a step back and realize those are things that I was creating, not because he was doing anything wrong, but sometimes when you're not, I'm trying to think of the word, when you're not like healed,
Mm-hmm.
you'll start to reflect problems in your partner that are really problems within yourself.
Mm.
And I feel like,
Was it hard for you to do that?
of course,
Yeah.
because nobody wants to see themselves, right?
Oof.
But then when you start realizing, again, you're creating problems that are not even there because you're refusing to reflect on my own insecurities. There were things, again, I needed to heal within myself. So living together definitely helped with that because
Okay.
I was able to realize like a lot of things that I was just so used to being so independent. I was just so used to doing things by myself. I was so used to doing things my way that I never even for a second thought of like the other person that was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, God, you are so good because if this person was not for me, I can see how he had an exit so many times. He had that exit every time, and he didn't.
So if you could give your single self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Single self. I would say like relax, girl. Relax because I find not only with myself but even with some of my friends that I talk to or just women in general, we're so quick to blame men, and sometimes it's just realizing what in you attracts that kind of man.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So are these men really trash, or is it me that's trash attracting
Ooh.
trash? Um, and
Oof.
sometimes that's that truth. You know what I mean? Because again, I grew up.
That's hard.
It's hard, but sometimes you have to hear it that way, or at least for me, I have to hear it that way.
Yeah. No, I.
In the sense of, okay, first guy, you met him. First of all, you met him sneaking out. You were at a club. Not saying you can't meet someone at the club or whatever the case is, but you're dancing to songs that are, I'm Jamaican, so you're listening to the words of the music, listening to what you're affirming over your life. Are you surprised that you ended up with a baby daddy? Self, no, I'm not. Okay, then
See, I feel like that's the hardest part. And I mean, now for me, different, but still like, okay, what did you do to get to this place? Um, that was hard.
it's hard.
Like, and what shifted for me was wanting to be married, right? And being
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, God, why isn't it working?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a simple prayer. And he held up the mirror and I was like,
But then but you know what I mean? Especially, let me tell you what's really hard
please.
when you're with someone asking for something and the moment they're not with you anymore. Both my baby fathers got married after me. So it made me feel like clearly it wasn't you not wanting to be married. You just didn't want to be married to me. So
Mm-hmm.
what is it within me that, first of all, I'm rowdy. You know what I mean? Like, who wants to be with someone who you can't even talk to without it turning into 0 to 10?
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I'm not going to say they didn't play a part in it because
Mm-hmm.
clearly they did. But are there ways I could have handled arguments different? Of course. Are there ways that I could have maybe adjusted my attitude? Of course. But when you're in the moment and you're just feeling like it's what I want, it's how I see things, you just realize like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, it was easy to get along with. So I get that too.
All right. So just a couple more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Our platform is created and designed for women who are probably most likely struggling to get the commitment they desire. It could be they're in a relationship with someone who doesn't want to be married, or they may be older and just struggling with relationships in general. And if she's listening, she's with a guy, he doesn't want to get married, and she wants to get married. She's about to give up, or she's about to just just chill out with him for the rest of her life. What would you say to her if she's listening?
I always say if he wants to, he will. It's just as simple as that. Like I just see it in so many different situations. If a man truly wants to be with you, he will. If he truly wants to get married to you, he will. It's not going to be because he doesn't have X amount of dollars. It's not going to be because whatever the fill in the blank the excuse is.
Mm-hmm.
if he wants to marry you, he will, without a ring, whatever the case is. The things that he thinks you deserve will come later, but if he wants to, he will. And if you have to convince, force, do anything to convince him, he's not the person for you. He's just not. And sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow, because I feel like as women, we put ourselves on high pedestals and we think that, why would he not want to be with me? But if he's already showing you that, then that's what it is. And had I would have understood that, I would have saved myself years of embarrassment, years of heartache, years of why not me? Why not me? Because if you go back and you really think about it, he's already saying that he doesn't want to be with you without even maybe saying those exact words.
Yeah, I remember feeling kind of convincing myself otherwise when they would, and I always talk about men are telling you exactly what they want.
Correct.
And what they don't want. Okay, I'm going to tell this story, and then it's kind of embarrassing, but we're going to wrap up after that. I remember I was dating this guy, and he had basically broken up with me. And I was like, no, we're not breaking up. You're just confused. And I'm
How many times have we said that
thinking
story?
back, I'm like,
don't be embarrassed.
oh my God, cringe.
We've all done it. We've all done it.
You don't know what you're talking about. I'm awesome.
Girl, that's why I said sometimes I just look back and I'm just like, God, you are so good.
I know.
It was me.
That's funny. It was me. And so that's the thing. One of the things that I like to always talk about is it's not that you're not valuable. It's not that you're not worthy. It's not like that you cannot have this life that you're praying for. But sometimes we're just standing in our own way. We've picked up so much baggage. It's literally in our hands, and we can't make room for anything else because we've been hurt. Like self-preservation, self-sabotage, all those things are literally blocking us from the life that we want. And we think we're protecting ourselves. We think we're doing ourselves a favor, and you're really doing yourself an injustice. So sometimes, like when they say let go and let God, you gotta let all that stuff go and just trust him.
Literally.
So it's this is funny because we like the same thing. Okay. So I want to give you an opportunity to share more about your business and just, tell us what you're doing. Tell us how the people can get in contact with you. And tell us what you're up to.
Okay. Well, every week let me backtrack a little bit. I host positive discipline workshops, and I am hosting free 1 hour positive discipline workshops at the Swizer, I think that's what it's called, the Swizer Library. I partnered with them recently. Every week I host a lunch and learn on Zoom, also for positive discipline. And yeah, my Instagram is no_perfect_parents. And there I talk about positive discipline within the Black and Brown community, because I feel like that's a whole nother episode. But that's what I've been doing.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out to come and chat. It was hilarious and sweet and all the things. So you're not asking for too much. There is a guy that will give you the love, the support. He'll go to the car dealership with you and just show up. So I don't want you to think that you're asking for too much. So we appreciate you for stopping by today. Miss Shanna Kay came through. And thank you so much for checking us out on the Real Love Talk podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. And remember, we always want to hear from you in the comments. We love to hear your feedback. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Real Love. Hello.
Take a break. Hold on.
Ready?
Yes. Okay, there you go.